Hello friends, welcome to EPG Pathshala. Myself Dr. Taruna Bansal from Department of Geography, Jamia Millia Islamia. Today I will be talking on radicalism, approach in geographical thought of geography, which actually deals with how a paradigm shift occurred in this particular discipline after quantitative revolution. The learned objectives of this particular modules are to understand the socio-economic context in which political radicalism took place. Secondly, to explore how social relevance movement emerged. Thirdly, to study how the radical stream and the liberal stream of this particular movement differed and then converged. To analyze how radicalism is linked to imperialism as well as anarchism. To trace the gradual shifting of radicalism towards Marxism. To undertake a critical review, that is, merits and weaknesses of social relevance movement. To start with, in the leftist ideological group, there were two sections, one known as left liberal and the other left radical. Both these sections were basically concerned with inequalities or deprivation. Now, inequalities basically means the divide between the rich and the poor. They were against capitalism as such. They both criticized positivists. Why? Because positivism could not answer the questions of deprivation, dislocation, crime, problems of female issues or class differences. As we all know, quantitative revolution basically is the use of statistical techniques in the geography. Now, when these statistical techniques were used, people said that it has been quantified. Now, when it was quantified, the behavior of people was totally ignored. As a result, geography became purely spatial science or quantitative in nature. Radicalism emerged as one of the critique of positivism or quantitative revolution. So, I will now deal with how radicalism started or what was the context of in which radicalism appeared in geography as a paradigm. Amid mass demonstrations against government social policies for which people came out on the streets of various American cities, political radicalism through revival of socialist parties happened due to certain reasons, which I have discussed now. After the World War II, there was a steady economic growth for about 2 decades. Then an economic slowdown or slump started to happen. In such a situation, people became conscious about the role of its government, its successful schemes as well as failed projects. It was widely felt that the fruits of economic growth was not being shared equally and a substantive chunk of society was facing economic hardship. This fueled grievance against government, and that's how civil rights movements took place in almost all the American cities during late 60s. Another point of discontent was Vietnam War, where USA's aggression was viewed as an imperialist hegemonic pursuit. By and large, it was against the essence of democracy which USA always preached and practiced. It not only led to the destruction of lives and properties of Vietnamese, but also led to death of large number of US soldiers fighting in Vietnam. American people, especially the youth, revolted against the government for the Vietnam War. Student protests were not only limited to its place of origin, that is USA, but it expanded to a number of European countries. Third is the problem of black population who lived in shabby physical environment which started to emerge. Such problems pinpointed the failure of economic growth-centric government policies which was running under the profit maximization policies. Thus, what we see is that these problems which were there but started mushrooming as people became conscious of how government was pro-capitalist and not socialist or towards the larger chunk of the population. Now, the social relevance revolution. Given this context, a reassessment of purpose and methodologies of natural as well as social sciences began. It was felt that human being and their environment as a part of the earth is the most important subject that natural and social sciences could inquire in details. And especially if we talk of geographers, this was the base of their study or the theoretical base. Because we all know, if we see what is geography, geography is basically the study of Earth as home of man. This definition was given by Eratosthenes, who coined this term geography. Now, if we talk of geographers, the relationship between man and environment becomes very important, and especially environment not as we see as physical environment, because in most of the books you will see that they write physical environment and it has three components. One, biotic components, second, abiotic components, and third, energy. But nobody actually talks of social or cultural environment, while that is the important environment which influences man's personality to the best extent. Now, what are the components of this social environment? You know, Zelensky gave three major components. He calls them mentifacts, sociofacts, artifacts. Mentifacts, something which is man's ability. So, man has his ability to take things as he sees. So, from that particular ability, he has invented large number of technological advancements, or science has been a result of man's innovation. So, this becomes part of mentifacts. Now, when we come to sociofacts, sociofact means man's relation to society at an individual level as well as at a group level. So, when we talk of individual level, each person's caring, you know, childbearing, the family he belongs to is the part of its social environment. But when we talk of at group level, this, you know, the institutions where he is studying, the political institutions where he is affiliated, all these are part of sociofacts. And naturally you see the ethos, or the, you know, the way the person has been educated is very prominently seen in that particular person's personality. Third is artifacts. Now, artifacts are very important, which can be called as cultural thrift or thrift. Now, what is this? This is the outcome of man's mental ability. So, you know, we have different land uses, we have different settlements which have come up over the time. So, when we see man and environment relationship, especially from the point of view of geography, we need to see, you know, social environment, and that is why, you know, all these paradigm shifts which occurred in geography were more towards social line than on the natural, because you see quantitative revolution occurred in physical geography as well as human geography, but the shift from quantitative revolution to other paradigms is more prominent in human geography, that is in urban geography, agricultural geography, settlement geography. So, that is because here man is studying its social environment. Now, to continue, geographers who were working on the themes of optimum location of infrastructural facilities now started to focus both on physical and social environment that surround people. This phase of revolution is geography, after the much acclaimed quantitative revolution, as I already mentioned, is known as radical revolution, which is also termed as social relevance revolution or radicalism. Now, how this emerged, or the radical stream of this particular revolution. In fact, radical revolution emerged as a critique of quantitative revolution. During 1950s, the philosophy of positivism and empiricism became very influential. Geographers, while interacting with other disciplines, also started applying various tools and techniques to analyze and explain spatial variation of man-nature interaction. They got so engrossed in model building that the theoretical approach towards looking at socio-economic problems was totally sidelined, and availability of data and application of techniques started to guide research procedures. In such a context, through radical revolution, a new discourse started, which reminded geographers that it is theoretical understanding that shows the path of research through exploration of suitable data set and methods, and not the other way around. Radicalists' viewpoint started through William Bunge's work, who wrote about radicalist idea in his book Theoretical Geography in 1962, and also founded Society for Human Exploration in 1968. This society urged geographers to undertake field work in areas where poorest people live, or the areas which are most backward and depressed. Such expeditions targeted to acquire first-hand and unbiased information of these areas, so that a collective engagement with local people can bring meaningful inputs and bring about sound policy and planning framework. Few expeditions were carried out in Detroit itself. for providing training to aspirants who show interest to participate in such programs. A course was opened up in University of Michigan. As university officials did not cooperate at the later stages, they were stopped in USA. But such expeditions continued in Toronto in Canada, Sydney in Australia, and London in England. Moreover, the Union of Socialist Geographers (USG) was established in 1974. Members of this USG participated in special sessions of ARG conventions and IBG annual meetings. Radicalist ideas flourished in the hands of David Harvey and Richard Peet. Harvey wrote Social Justice and the City, where he talked about black people living in ghettos, while Richard Peet started to publish articles in a famous journal known as Antipode in Clark University in 1969. The issues in Antipode were quite revolutionary. They talked about urban poverty, discrimination against blacks, feminism, cruelty against women, crime deprivation, problems pertaining to minorities, etc. Therefore, now geography got a breakthrough from its original regional or systematic approach, where it started incorporating new social issues. Due to increased poverty and inequality, especially poverty, among the people of ghettos and rural areas, radicalists tried to perceive planning from a new viewpoint, that is, planning with the people rather than for the people. According to Harvey, geographers should consider the question as to who is going to control whom, in whose interest the controlling is going to be exercised, and if it is exercised in the interest of people, who is going to take it upon himself to define that particular or public interest. Important features and objectives of this stream are: number one, to expose the issues of discrimination, deprivation, inequalities, crimes, issues pertaining to health and mental degradation in the capitalist society. Secondly, to pinpoint the weakness of positivism and quantitative revolution in geography, which emphasized geography more of as a spatial science and did not deal with the human issues. Thirdly, to remove regional equality, radicalists opposed economic and political concentration, imperialism and nationalism. They even opposed superiority of a particular race and prescribed revolutionary changes in the work order to develop tension-free, peaceful environment for all. Therefore, radicalism developed as a critique of existing models, because such models, especially those adopting positivist methodology, were supposed to be value neutral, was helping the imperialist forces to maintain the status quo. Geography was a tool for imperialists. Radicalism criticized this system. It always talked from the standpoint of people who were not in control of means of production, that is, land, labor, capital and organization, and always supported the downtrodden group of society. Radicalist thinking always went against nationalism. Before radicalist thinking, geography was a science which protected the ideology of majority who owns the means of production. But radicalists severely criticized this. It is also developed as a protest against data. Radicalists thought of a society which is controlled by all. Radicalists like James Blount attempted to link the issue of imperialism with capitalism. Imperialism denotes domination and subordination of one country to another, be it in economic or political terms. More developed countries had a tendency to control less developed ones by exploiting not only natural resources but also setting terms of trades often biased against these less developed countries. Capitalist countries, through this control, created a monopoly situation. Another issue was ethnocentrism, where an ethnic group was considered superior than other groups. European ethnocentrism pointed towards the superiority of Europe over Asia and Africa, the superiority of whites over non-whites. It also showed how the world and wide development persists in Europe. Blount was very critical to this unicentric model and explained how Europe progressed at the cost of disrupting number of African and Asian countries. Imperialistic hegemony through colonization of many African and Asian countries paved the way for European countries to gain billions of wealth. This led to the progress of Europe, not only in the terms of expansion of industries or commercial activities, but also in education and technology. As the entire idea of racial superiority and ethnocentrism was based on certain prejudices, radicalists opposed it. This led to the progress of Europe in terms of expansion of industries, commercial activities, as well as education and technology. The entire idea of racial superiority and ethnocentrism was based on certain prejudices, and radicalists opposed it. Radicalists also opposed the way females were being oppressed not only in developed countries but also in developing countries. Females were found to have an unequal role in terms of decision making in households. We all know that even today, whatever work women is doing at home as a mother, as a wife, as a cook, is not regarded as a work. So basically, in terms of economy, that work is not considered to give or to benefit GDP, which we know on a personal basis is not correct. So basically, they were being systematically exploited as their role was defined from a male perspective. They had relatively less mobility and their role was defined to be restricted within household. As I said, mainly cooking and taking care of children. To a certain extent, radicalism can be linked with anarchism. Anarchism called for the removal of state and its replacement by voluntary groups of individuals. These individuals could work without external pressure and maintain social order. In a way, anarchism promotes individual liberalism and socialism. Peter Kropotkin, or Reckless, elaborated on the way by which such social orders can be maintained. Kropotkin attacked capitalism on the ground that it increased competition and inequalities. He commented that mutual cooperation and support help a society or a community to live peacefully. Cooperation-based production, decision-making at grassroots level, democracy, greater integration of short-distant workspace and living space, some ideals where radical geographers followed Kropotkin. Now we come to the liberal stream of this movement. Now what was this? Liberalism, although believes in democratic capitalism, advocates executive actions for minimizing social and spatial inequalities in the level of human well-being. It shows a commitment towards ensuring a basic minimum level of standard of living for all. Therefore, it prescribes state action in helping less privileged or downtrodden section of the human society. Statistical techniques involving multiple variables were applied to map levels of human beings. Thomson and Associates did this work in 1962. The works done by Smith in 1973 and Knox in 1975 are often referred in geographical literature. Measurement and mapping of variables related to human well-being became important, and such variables were categorized into three subsets. 1. Physical needs. These basically include food, shelter and health. Food can also be termed as nutrition. Second is the cultural need. Now what are these? Education, recreation, leisure and security. And the third is higher needs. Now this higher needs basically is for people which when person earns surplus. So when a person has surplus income, he'll have these higher needs. Their work shows that geographers can play a very significant role in informing policymakers about the spatial implications of inequalities so that better decisions can be taken for improving policies and schemes further. Another part of these works is raising awareness among citizens so that they become informed of different welfare issues the schemes which were being brought forward by the government. Cox in 1973 and Massam in 1976 looked at how efficiently public services can be provided by redrawing of administrative boundaries or changing the location of public facilities. David Smith, in his wonderful work, which is also called one of the best works in this particular field, Human Geography, a Welfare Approach, which was published in 1977, focuses on who gets what where and how. So, you know, now the question changes. Now we are not answering the question that what is where and why it is where, but now the question is who gets what, where and how. So, the people who are not getting, who are unequal, who are basically throughout the history have been treated as downtrodden, unequal, were being taken into consideration, and this basically reoriented the goal of human geography towards making a society where spatial malpractices and injustices are done away with. Therefore, the distribution of fruits of economic growth emerged as an important issue. Moreover, this stream of social relevance movement also advocates that our surrounding environment should be looked into rather well. So, you know, now not only the spatial, the nature of human geography change, but even the way one is looking or perceiving environment change. So, you know, after radical paradigm came into geography, the issues like environmental degradation, conservation, management were also now being discussed. Now, how this particular approach shifted towards Marxist geography, and you will be astonished to know that in large number of literature, if you read on radical geography, it is also mentioned as Marxist geography. So, now what I will be telling you is how this radical geography, which was at one time a social relevance movement, shifted towards being Marxist. A great contribution of guiding geography towards Marxism happened through the works of David Harvey. In his book on ghettos located in American cities, he pointed towards roots of problem that lie in capitalism. According to him, capitalistic system created such a market-based economy, or rather a mechanism that regulate land use, which is biased against poor black population. He argued that once a geographer adopts this particular Marxist approach towards looking social problems, he cannot detach himself or herself. That's why a political awareness is generated within them, and they get actively involved in making a society with more justice. His influence was so strong that some practitioners of social relevance research started adopting Marxist approach. Nowadays, radical geography is more aptly known as Marxist geography. Now, what is the critique? How this radical approach did not become, you know, very popular, and why it basically had an early death. You know, there are certain people who are still working on this approach, as is especially in America, because I already mentioned that we have this journal which was started by Richard Peet, Antipode. It's still coming, and if you actually look through this journal, you will see that the articles which are published in this journal are more towards Marxist, you know, have a bent towards Marxism, but still it is not as popular as it seemed when this paradigm or when this approach began. So, there was a huge criticism, and now we will discuss what is the criticism, why this particular movement was criticized. Social relevance movement, especially radicalism, was able to usher in some fruitful changes in the methodological discourse of geographical studies. Now, what were these? One, from the rhetoric of quantitative techniques based analysis of geographical attributes, it reoriented human geography towards prominent social as well as environmental issues, thereby broadening the scope of geography. And as the scope of geography broadened, it started interacting with other disciplines of social sciences. And here I can quote that after quantitative revolution, or rather when this quantitative revolution was occurring, people forgot about the circumference of human geography, which Feynman talked in 1990. Okay, so in that, if you have seen that diagram, it looks like a beautiful flower where human geography takes from other social disciplines. So if we are talking of social geography, it has taken some of its parts from sociology. If we are talking of economic geography, it has taken something from economic geography. If we talk of geomorphology, it has some parts of geology. So that was actually happening. But when quantitative revolution started dominating the domain of geography, the geographers absolutely forgot social as well as environmental issues. The entire study, the entire discipline became empirical. You know, you collect some set of data and you come to the conclusions, and that is why model building, making became very important. So when radicalism came, it brought back geography as, you know, a theoretical discipline which could now again interact with other disciplines of social sciences. So this is one of the very big contribution of this particular approach. Now the classical tradition of fieldwork in a small region was altered in the sense that more in-depth and participatory planning oriented studies were encouraged. So again you see that people oriented. Now it is like, you know, you are not just taking data, you are going to field work. You are going to the field, interacting with people and then seeing what pattern is emerging. Now this field work entailed a new pattern where respondents were involved in the process of surveying. And one needs to understand that this new pattern was quite challenging. The expeditions promoted by the Society for Human Exploration could not go on extensively, but you know, there were many reasons, because you know, to have or to do fieldwork on a large scale is very difficult, because it included, it was like, you know, you had to take the power structure into confidence, but usually this does not happen, that, you know, and when you go for the survey, it's not sure that the information which respondent is giving you is true or not. So, you know, there are certain restrictions, but even though it received, you know, like large number of people did go for it, and an academic interest did develop in this process of surveying. Now, but then, as you know, all the approaches have, this particular approach or this particular paradigm had its limitations and weaknesses. Now the first limitation or the first criticism which came was from the Russians, who claimed that they were the true communists and Marxists, while radicalism was totally an American enterprise. So you know, we always know that there was a Cold War between America and Soviet Union. So when radicalism came, and that too based in America, Russians started criticizing it, saying that, you know, communalism or Marxism is theirs, and they are the true leaders or the true fathers of that. So radicalism, being American, was not digested or was not taken by them. Now though radicalists in America talked about social change, they never talked about armed revolution, which is the basic component of Marxist ideology. The second criticism is that the theoretical base was very weak. Now why was that? Because, you know, when you read the literature, everybody in radical geography or in Marxist geography does not provide theory. They are dependent on other social sciences. So they do not have their own theory. They do not have the philosophy of radicalism. They've taken, you know, some parts from here and there and come up with this approach. So naturally, theoretically, it became very weak. Social justice and the city was sociological, political or economic analysis. Now, though the topic of radicalism was varied, the technique and methodologies were not very path-breaking. Now, what do I mean by saying this? Is they didn't come with something new that would, you know, sustain them for a large number of years, for a longer period of time. It was like, you know, maybe old wine in a new bottle. Only the thing was, they were criticizing. They were basically criticizing quantitative revolution, and in criticizing quantitative revolution, they gave overweightage to Marxism. Now, geography, by virtue of its subject matter, is a spatial science, and it cannot be explained totally with the help of Marxist thinking. So, if you try to analyze a geographical phenomena taking Marxism as the base, it's not going to happen, because we are talking of geography as a science where space or an area is very important. And the ultimate question which they were trying to answer is, who will guard the guardians? That means you are talking of public interest, you are talking of interest of a larger population, and you are saying that there should be a number of volunteer groups. But who will guard those guardians? Now, if we see the socialist governments who followed Marx could not solve this problem, and even the problems of the oppressed class. Humanistic geographers critically, you know, criticized radicalists, because they say that more, you know, emphasis have to be given on people, not an ideology. So if you try to differentiate radical geography from humanistic geography, it will be that in humanistic geography, as the name states, emphasis is on people. But if you say radical geography or Marxist geography, emphasis is on ideology. So what does humanistic geography say? It says that geography cannot be explained through any one generalized theory. It has to be human specific. Now interestingly, not only humanistic approach people or the humanistic geographers criticized radical geography, positivists also criticized radicalism. Now this is very interesting. Just see, radicalism came as a result of criticism of positivism, but now positivism or the people who are positivists criticize radicalism. Now why? Because they do not take any help from any empirical science. And now this becomes very prominent, because after the fall of USSR and East European nations in the end of 1980s, the worldwide impression which went was that socialism has no value and capitalism has won. So if we see the history, radicalism has failed. Socialism is nowhere, and it is capitalism which is pertaining or which is prevailing. So as an approach or as an ideology, radicalism did not sustain. Moreover, geography is basically a locational science, and it is based on empirical positivist values, and which is the tool of capitalists. So when geography is taking imperialistic positivist view or values as the base, radicalism cannot sustain. Although as I already mentioned, some of the geographers, especially in America, are working on this approach. It is continuing, but as an approach, why we need to study radicalism in geography or in the history of geographical thought is that it brought a paradigm shift in the way social and environmental issues were incorporated within the scope of geography. Thank you.